My name is Olivia. I'm a 30-year-old woman who loves numbers and planning. I have a good job and a stable life. People always said I was good with numbers. This skill has helped me a lot in life. But everything changed when I met Michael. I first saw Michael at a party. I don't usually go to parties, but my friend Sarah convinced me. "Come on, Olivia, you need to get out more," she had said. At the party, I was standing alone, holding a drink, when Michael walked up to me. He was tall and had a smile that made people feel at ease. "Hi, I'm Michael. I don't think we've met," he said, extending his hand. I shook his hand. "I'm Olivia." "So, Olivia, what brings you here?" he asked. I shrugged. "My friend dragged me here. I'm not much of a party person." "Neither am I," Michael laughed. "But sometimes it's good to get out of your comfort zone." We talked for a while. Michael was easy to talk to. He listened to me and made me laugh. He told me about his job at a local bookstore and his love for old movies. I told him about my job as an accountant and my love for puzzles. As the night went on, we found ourselves sitting away from the crowd, lost in our conversation. It was strange. We were so different, yet we connected so easily. When the party ended, Michael asked for my number. "I'd like to see you again, Olivia. Maybe we can go for coffee." I hesitated, but then nodded. "Sure, that would be nice." We started seeing each other after that night. We went on dates, watched movies, and talked for hours. Michael was charming and kind. He made me feel special. But there was one thing that bothered me. Michael didn't plan much. He lived in the moment, which was the opposite of me. I love to plan everything. It made me feel in control. One day I brought this up, "Michael, don't you think you should plan more? It's important to have a plan." Michael just smiled. "Olivia, I like the way I live. Planning is good, but sometimes you have to just go with the flow." I didn't understand it, but I liked him too much to argue. Months passed, and our relationship grew stronger. One evening, Michael took me to a quiet spot by the river. It was a beautiful night. The stars were out, and the air was fresh. "Olivia," Michael said, turning to me, "I love you. I know we're different, but I think that's what makes us special. Will you marry me?" I was shocked. Marriage was a big step, but looking into Michael's eyes, I saw sincerity and love. "Yes, Michael, I'll marry you," I said, and that's how my life took a turn. Olivia, the woman who loved numbers and planning, was going to marry Michael, the charming, easygoing man who lived in the moment. It was unexpected, but sometimes life is like that. It surprises you when you least expect it. When Michael and I decided to get married, I imagined a small wedding, just close family and friends, a simple ceremony, and maybe a dinner afterward. But things didn't go as I had imagined. We met each other's parents to share the news. My parents liked Michael right away. "He's a simple, honest man," my dad said, shaking Michael's hand. Michael's parents, on the other hand, seemed relieved. "It's good you found someone serious," his mom Margaret said with a sigh. As we started planning the wedding, Michael and I sat down with our parents. I was thinking of a small wedding. I began looking at Michael for support. He nodded in agreement, but Margaret had other ideas. "Oh no, dear. Michael is our only son. We must have a big wedding. All our friends and family should come. It needs to be grand." I tried to protest, but Michael supported her. "Mom knows best, Olivia. Let's do what she wants." So the wedding planning began. It was nothing like what I had wanted. The guest list kept growing. Strangers I had never met were invited. The venue was huge, the decorations extravagant, and everything was over the top. One day, while tasting cakes, I tried to talk to Michael. "This is too much, Michael. This isn't what we wanted." But Michael just shrugged. "It's just one day, Olivia. Let's make everyone happy." The wedding day arrived. I stood in a dressing room, wearing a dress that was too big and too fancy. Sarah was there, trying to cheer me up. "You look beautiful, Olivia," she said. I forced a smile. "Thanks, Sarah. I just wish this was different." As I walked down the aisle, I saw so many faces, most of which I didn't recognize. The ceremony was a blur. I said I do, but my heart was heavy. The reception was even worse. Loud music, too many people, and Margaret hovering around, making sure everything was as she wanted. At one point, I stepped outside for some air. Michael found me. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked. I looked at him, feeling a mix of emotions. "This isn't what I wanted, Michael. This isn't us," I said. Michael took my hand. "I know, Olivia, but it's just one day. We have our whole lives ahead of us." I wanted to believe him, but standing there surrounded by a celebration that felt more like an ordeal, I couldn't help but wonder if I had made a mistake. I loved Michael, but our wedding, something that was supposed to be about us, had turned into something unrecognizable, and that worried me. The days after the wedding were supposed to be happy, but they weren't. Michael and I settled into our new life, but something had changed. And then Margaret came into the picture in a way I hadn't expected. It was a Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Margaret standing there with a suitcase. "Margaret, what a surprise. Is everything okay?" I asked, confused. "Oh dear, I thought Michael told you. I'm staying with you for a while. My house is being renovated," she said, pushing past me. I was stunned. Michael hadn't mentioned anything. I called him at work. "Michael, why didn't you tell me your mom was staying with us?" He replied casually, "Oh, I forgot. It's just for a few weeks, Olivia. It's not a big deal." But it was a big deal. Margaret didn't just stay with us. She took over our lives. She had opinions on everything, what we ate, how we cleaned, and especially how we spent our money. One evening, I came home to find Margaret sitting at the kitchen table with our bills spread out in front of her. "What are you doing, Margaret?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm looking at your expenses. You're spending too much. As a family, we need to save," she said, not looking up. I was shocked. "Margaret, these are our personal finances. It's not your place." Margaret finally looked at me. "As your mother-in-law and an elder, it is my place. I'm just trying to help." I wanted to argue, but I knew it wouldn't help. I walked away, feeling frustrated and invaded. The situation got worse. Margaret criticized everything I did. One Saturday, I was making breakfast when she walked into the kitchen. "You're making pancakes. That's too many carbs. You should make something healthier," she said, frowning. I took a deep breath. "Margaret, I appreciate your concern, but I can make my own decisions about what I eat." She tutted. "I'm just saying a wife should take care of her health." I felt my anger rising, but before I could say anything, Michael walked in. "What's going on?" he asked. "Your mother is telling me how to cook now," I said, my voice shaking with anger. Michael looked uncomfortable. "Mom, maybe you should let Olivia do her thing." Margaret rolled her eyes. "Fine, but don't blame me if things go wrong." That night, I tried to talk to Michael. "I can't live like this. Your mother is controlling everything," I said. Michael sighed. "She's just trying to help, Olivia. She's old and set in her ways." "But this is our home, Michael. We should make our own decisions," I argued. Michael didn't say anything. He just went to bed, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I had reached my limit with Margaret's constant meddling and criticism, especially regarding our finances. It was time to take a stand. One evening, as we all sat in the living room, I decided to bring up the subject. "Margaret, I've been thinking," I began, trying to keep my tone neutral. "How about we do an experiment? For 1 month, let's keep separate budgets for our expenses. Then we can compare and see who's more efficient with money." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "An experiment? Interesting. You think you can manage better than me?" I nodded. "Yes, I do." Michael looked uneasy. "Olivia, is this necessary?" "Yes, Michael, it is. "I think it's a fair challenge," I said firmly. Margaret smiled, almost smugly. "All right, dear. Challenge accepted." So the battle of budgets began. I kept meticulous records of every penny I spent, making sure to be as efficient as possible. Meanwhile, I noticed Michael sneaking extra cash from the joint account, but I didn't say anything. The month flew by, and soon it was time to compare our expenses. We sat down at the dining table, each with our records. "Let's see what you've got, Olivia," Margaret said, a confident smile on her face. I laid out my documents, showing every transaction and bill. "As you can see, I've managed to save quite a bit this month, even with all the regular expenses." Margaret looked over the papers, her smile fading slightly. "Not bad, but let's see what Michael has." Michael cleared his throat. "Well, I didn't spend much, just the usual stuff." I decided it was time to reveal what I knew. "Michael, what about the extra money you took from our joint account?" Michael's face turned red. I needed it for some personal things." I pulled out the bank statements from the joint account. "Here's the proof. Your spending was higher than mine this month." Margaret's face was a mix of surprise and anger. "Michael, you lied." Michael didn't have an answer. He just looked down, embarrassed. I turned to Margaret. "As you can see, I'm quite capable of managing our finances efficiently." Margaret was silent for a moment. Then she looked up, her expression hard. "Fine, you've made your point, but this doesn't change anything. I still believe I know what's best for this family." I let out a sigh. It was a small victory, but I knew the battle was far from over. Margaret's control over our lives was still a problem, and Michael's lack of support was even more concerning. But at least I had proven my point. I was good with numbers, and I knew how to manage money. It was a start, but I knew there were more challenges ahead. The air was tense after the budget challenge. Margaret's attitude towards me hadn't improved, and Michael was still avoiding any confrontation. I knew something had to give, and soon it did, but not in the way I expected. It was a Saturday morning, and I was in the kitchen making coffee when Margaret walked in, her expression stern. "Olivia, we need to talk," she said, her voice sharp. I turned to face her. "Okay, Margaret, what's on your mind?" "It's about your attitude towards money. You're too controlling, too greedy. It's not healthy," she accused. I was taken aback. "Greedy, Margaret? I'm just trying to be responsible with our finances," I countered. Margaret shook her head. "No, you're hoarding. You don't want to share. You don't understand what it means to be part of a family." I felt my frustration rising. "That's not true. I work hard for my money, and I think it's fair to want to manage it wisely." Before I could say more, Michael walked in. "What's going on?" he asked. "Your wife," Margaret said. Turning to him, "She's too obsessed with money. It's not right." Michael looked at me, then at his mother. "Olivia, maybe you should ease up a bit. Mom has a point." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Michael, you're taking her side after all the evidence I showed you." Michael shrugged. "I just think we should all get along." That was the last straw. I stormed out of the kitchen and went to our home office. I pulled out the documents I had been keeping, proof of all the money Michael had been giving to Margaret without my knowledge. I gathered everything and went back to the kitchen. "Okay, you want to talk about money? Let's talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. I laid out the documents on the table, bank statements, receipts, everything. "Here's proof of all the money Michael has been giving you, Margaret, most of it from my earnings." Margaret's face turned red. "That's none of your business. He's my son, and he's helping his mother." I looked at Michael. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Michael looked away. "I just wanted to help her." I turned back to Margaret. "And what about the wedding? You wanted a grand affair. Who do you think paid for that? It was me, against my wishes." Margaret was silent, her mouth a tight line. I took a deep breath. I've had enough. This is not how a family should be. I work hard for my money, and I won't be accused of being greedy or controlling for wanting to manage it responsibly. Margaret looked at me, her eyes cold. So what are you going to do? I met her gaze. I'm going to think about what's best for me. This can't go on. With that, I left the room. I felt a mix of anger, frustration, and sadness. My marriage was crumbling, and the family I had hoped to be part of was nothing like I had imagined. It was time to make some tough decisions, but for the moment, I just needed some space to think and to breathe. The house felt colder. The walls seemed to echo my thoughts. I spent the next few days mostly in silence, contemplating my next steps. I knew a conversation with Michael was inevitable, and it came sooner than I expected. It was a quiet evening. Michael walked into the living room where I was sitting, a determined look on his face. "We need to talk, Olivia," he said. I nodded. "Yes, we do." He took a deep breath. "I've been thinking, and I've made a decision." I waited, my heart pounding. I want things to go back to how they were. I want to spend my money how I like. I don't want to argue about it anymore, he said. I looked at him, trying to keep my emotions in check. Michael, it's not just about the money. It's about respect, trust, and partnership. We're supposed to be in this together, I said. He shook his head. I can't live like this, constantly being questioned and judged. So I'm giving you an ultimatum. Let me spend without restraint or we get a divorce. His words hit me like a punch. I felt a mix of disbelief and clarity. You're giving me an ultimatum? I asked, trying to process. Yes, he said firmly. I took a moment to gather my thoughts. Okay, Michael, if that's how you see our marriage, then I agree to the divorce, I said, standing up with a sense of resolve. He seemed taken aback. You agree just like that? I nodded. Yes, just like that. I won't be part of a marriage where my partner doesn't respect me or our future together. I deserve better. For the first time. I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Olivia, are you sure? I nodded. Yes, I'm sure. I want a partner who stands with me, not against me, and clearly that's not you. Michael didn't say anything more. He just turned and left the room. I sat back down, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was taking control of my life. The ultimatum was meant to corner me, but instead it had set me free. The house felt different after Michael left, quiet, empty, but it was a space I was ready to reclaim. I began by reorganizing, rearranging furniture and redecorating. It was therapeutic, a way of wiping the slate clean. One evening, while sorting through old photographs, my phone rang. It was Sarah, a dear friend I hadn't seen in months. Olivia, how are you holding up? Sarah's voice was warm, laced with concern. I'm managing, Sarah, just taking it one day at a time, I replied. I can't believe Michael did that, and his mom. I never trusted her, Sarah added. I let out a soft laugh. You and me both, but it's over now and focusing on what's ahead. You're so strong, Olivia. Hey, why don't we catch up soon? It's been too long, Sarah suggested. That sounds perfect. Let's do it, I agreed, feeling a flicker of excitement. We met the next evening at a cozy cafe, a place brimming with memories. Sarah's presence was comforting, a reminder of life beyond my recent troubles. Olivia, I'm so proud of you. You're handling this like a champ, Sarah said as we sipped our coffee. I shrugged modestly. I don't have a choice, Sarah. I refuse to let this break me. You're amazing, remember? I'm always here if you need anything, she said, squeezing my hand across the table. I smiled genuinely. Thank you, Sarah. That means the world to me. Life gradually regained its rhythm. I reconnected with friends, found solace in quiet evenings with books, and poured myself into my work. I was rediscovering myself, piece by piece. Then one day, out of the blue, my phone rang. It was Michael. Olivia, I want to apologize. Can we talk? His voice was unsteady. I hesitated but answered, Go ahead, Michael. I was wrong, terribly wrong. Living with my mom, it's impossible. She's never satisfied, and I can't keep up with her demands. I don't have enough money. I need to come back home, Olivia, he pleaded. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Michael, I accepted your apology, but it changes nothing. We had our time, and it's over now. I've moved on. Olivia, please, he interrupted, but I cut him off. No, Michael, this is my life, and I'm not going back to how things were. Take care of yourself. Hanging up, I felt a surge of empowerment. I had picked up the pieces of my shattered life, and I wasn't about to scatter them again. I was whole on my own, and that was all I needed. Months had passed since the divorce finalized, and each day felt like a step forward. The journey hadn't been easy, but it was mine, and I cherished every bit of it. My life had taken a turn, but I was in control now, steering it in a direction that felt right. One afternoon, as I sat in my office, crunching numbers, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. Hey, Liv, how about dinner tonight? Just the two of us. I smiled and quickly typed a response. Sounds great, Dad. See you tonight. Dinner with my dad was always special. He was the one who taught me to be strong, independent. We met at our favorite diner, a place that felt like home. As we settled into our booth, my dad looked at me with his kind eyes. How are you holding up, kiddo? I'm good, Dad. Really, I am. It's been tough, but I'm finding my way, I answered honestly. He nodded. You're strong, Olivia. Always have been. I'm proud of you. We talked about work, about life, about everything and nothing. It was comforting, familiar. Later that week, I was at the grocery store when I bumped into an old acquaintance, Emily. We had lost touch over the years, but seeing her felt like a pleasant surprise. Olivia, it's been ages. How are you? Emily greeted me with a warm smile. Hey, Emily, I'm doing well, thanks. Life's been interesting, I replied with a chuckle. We chatted for a while, catching up on old times before parting ways. As Emily said goodbye, she remarked, You seem different, Olivia. More at peace, I guess. I thought for a moment, I guess I am. It took a while, but I'm finally in a good place. The days turned into weeks and weeks into months. I had reclaimed my life, my space. I indulged in hobbies I had long forgotten, spent time with friends, and found joy in the little things. One evening, as I sat on my porch, sipping tea and watching the sunset, my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, walked by. She was an elderly lady, always kind and observant. Good evening, Olivia. You seem happy these days, she remarked, leaning on her walking stick. I smiled at her. Good evening, Mrs. Thompson. Yes, I am happy. It took some time, but I'm there. She nodded approvingly. Good for you, dear. Happiness is something we all deserve. As she walked away, I sat there, soaking in the calm of the evening. The journey had been long, filled with ups and downs. But as I looked back, I realized that every step, every stumble had led me here. I had lost a husband and a troublesome mother-in-law, but in return, I gained something far more precious, myself. I was complete, just as I was, a calculator in my head and a heart resilient enough to start anew.